welcome back to the inside of my head. So right off the bat, big fat spoilers for Dominion from the get-go. Like, I'm going to ruin the ending of that movie in literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 second. So the climactic battle in JWD sees Giganotosaurus take on not only Rexy, but the fearsome-looking Therizinosaurus. Fearsome-looking Therizinosaurus. No matter what you thought about Jurassic World Dominion, and I get the feeling that most people hated it, this thing was probably my favorite creature in the movie. It was probably the dinosaur that I'd seen the least of beforehand, so when it showed up and it was that big with those terrifying wide eyes and of course those crazy long claws, I was pretty impressed. And I really was not expecting it to be part of the final fight at the end. I was contemplating doing a We Need to Talk About the Therizinosaurus vid, just analyzing this creature by itself, but I don't think I'm going to get time to do that, so I'll just do it all in this vid right here, where I'm going to try and figure out what happened after those two dinosaurs beat the Giganotosaurus. Did they just suddenly have a mutual respect for each other and go their separate ways? I doubt it.
Good job, sir. No good job to you, sir.
No good job to you, sir.
No good job to you, sir.
And if they did, why wouldn't they fight each other? Well, I'll have a theory on that too later in the vid. So yeah, just in case I hadn't spoiled it enough already for you, Dominion ends with Rexy being beaten by the Giganotosaurus, but coming back from the dead and shoving the Giganotosaurus onto the Therizinosaurus' claws and impaling it. God damn these names! You know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna call them Jerry and Terry. Jerry dies, and in a moment that I found slightly odd, instead of the two super predators turning on each other, they both pull this kind of victory pose and roar together. Like they almost high-five and chest bump each other and go,
"Yeah, team!"
But what if the two had turned on each other? Let's take a look at the Therizinosaurus to try and find out. So Terry the Therizinosaurus would have lived 70 million years ago in what is now Mongolia. Its remains were found in the Nemegt formation of the Gobi Desert, but it was far from a complete specimen. What's known about it has been gleaned from only a few bones that were discovered in the first find in 1948, and then a few other later finds that were mostly just parts of limbs and stuff, but even these incomplete samples were enough to show that this thing had the longest known manual ungwals, that's finger claws to you and me, of any land animal, reaching above 50 centimeters in length. Now that might not be as long as what we saw in Dominion because these things look massive, but I don't know about you, but I'm okay with a little exaggeration in the name of entertainment. From what was known about other Therizinosaurids, it was extrapolated that this guy would have been a slow-moving, long-necked, high browser equipped with a ramfull, which is a horny beak to just us layman's, and a wide chest for food processing. But interestingly enough, the Therizinosaurus was initially thought to be a carnivore, but this guy was much more likely to have been a herbivore, and his claws were more likely to have been for grabbing hard-to-reach leaves and pulling them towards its toughened beak. They would have no doubt been useful for intimidating any carnivores that might have been eyeing this guy as a potential meal, for example the Torbosaurus, which was alive kind of around the same time. The Therizinosaurus could grow up to 5 meters tall and up to 10 meters long, although Jurassic World increased its proportion slightly to 6 meters tall and 12 meters long, weighing in at 6 tons. Now this is just my opinion here, but it's highly likely that Biosyn threw in some DNA from other species, because this guy seemed very aggressive and territorial, whereas a lot of the stuff that I've read makes it sound like the real-life Therizinosaurus was more of a sloth. Now, on one hand, I do like to think that herbivores could have been aggressive like this. There are a number of non-meat-eating animals that can be fucking ferocious, and we don't know if Terry here was just being territorial or whether it might have had young in the area, but knowing Biosyn and Dr. Wu's love of mixing things up to make things bigger, cooler, and scarier, I wouldn't be surprised if this clone was a hybrid. Someone even floated an idea that this thing was using echolocation, as you do hear all these clicks in the scene, and if that was true, then it's very likely to be a hybrid. Now, if you're wondering about Terry's scary eyes, it must have been something that was cut from the movie because as far as I can remember, it's never mentioned. Another inconsistency was how it could walk right up to the deer and rake it with its claws. Like, have you seen how nervous and fidgety deers are in the wild? It would have been aware of this hulking huge death bird from a mile away, but it just lets it plod up and I didn't get that. I don't know. But I'm getting sidetracked. Now, on to Rexy. Now, I'm going to just skim over this because a lot has been said about her already, but essentially, she's a 13.5 meter long and 5.2 meter tall death lizard. So, she's slightly longer, but slightly shorter than Jurassic's Therizinosaurus, but weighs in around 9 tons, although in the Q video for Jurassic World The Ride, Owen reportedly states that she weighs 30,000 pounds, which is 15 tons. In the movies, the producers keep trying to usurp her, but she keeps coming back to prove that the T-Rex is still the king. So even after Rexy is exhausted and wounded and battered and bleeding after the fight with the Giganotosaurus, I reckon that once these two lock eyes, it's go time. Their adrenaline is already spiked, their survival instinct is burning inside them, their territorial competitive nature kicks in, and there is no way they're not going after each other. If the Therizinosaurus knew what was good for her, don't know why I'm calling her, she would turn around and run, but she senses Rexy's depletion and catches the scent of blood and senses that a victory that would secure her place in history is on the cards as she goes in for the kill. She swings her claws, estimating the position of Rexy's head based on the sound of her breathing in an attempt to take out Rexy's eyes. The claws would rip open Rexy's skin, but it's just a flesh wound which pisses off Rexy no end. I thought we were allies, friends even, but no, you done fucked up now. Rexy uses what's left of her depleted strength. Her muscles are screaming with atrophy, but she rams her superior weight into Terry's side-impaired ass, sending it sprawling to the ground, possibly squawking like a panicked turkey on Thanksgiving. Her fucking eye dog shits itself and runs off whimpering before Rexy brings down those jaws around Terry's head and pneumatically pressing down with a reported 20,000 tons of pressure. Pressure? What pressure? This is business as usual for Rexy. She does this before breakfast. Sure, she wanted a siesta after dealing with the Giganotosaurus, but this psychotic lizard murders for fun. Bones crunch as they break, but Rexy doesn't let up until the flailing limbs of the Therizinosaurus go limp, and Rexy now has 2 supersized meals to stuff herself silly with. I always get carried away with these things, don't I? But yeah, the point is, there is no competition here. Maybe Terry gets lucky with a hit with the claws to the eyes, or maybe it could rip out Rexy's throat. But when you consider that the whole front end of this beast is basically teeth, there's not a million options when it comes to approaching this thing. I've got a feeling that post the events of Dominion, the Therizinosaurus probably just skulked away quickly, like without trying to make too much of a fuss, you know? And I reckon Rexy might let that happen, and there might be 2 reasons why. One, because she's just so tired from the fight with the Giganotosaurus. But 2, maybe there's something in the Therizinosaurus's DNA, like T-Rex DNA, that makes Rexy think, you're alright. Maybe even makes her think, hey, I'm gonna come find you later. And I hope it did get away. I hope it comes back in Camp Cretaceous or whatever's going to come next in the franchise. Because, like I said, it was one of my favorite creatures in the whole movie. Let me know what your favorite creature from that movie was. Let me know what your thoughts on the movie overall were, because I'm really curious to hear. Especially if there's anyone out there who actually really liked it. Curious to hear from you guys. And let me know which monster matchups, which versus videos that you guys want to see. Next up, I've got a couple of Mechagodzilla themed matchups. I thought about putting him up against the Pacific Rim Jaegers, but that was a little bit one-sided, so I made it a little bit more interesting than that. So I'm putting Mechagodzilla up against not only the Pacific Rim Jaegers, but also the Pacific Rim Kaiju. And then in my video after that, I'm going to put Mechagodzilla up against various Transformers. So until then, let me invite you to get out of my head, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!